I have to admit, I feel a little bit like a walking punchline right now. 3 venture capitalists walk into
a barn.
A bar. A barn. Good job, Sterling. We're really excited to be here talking with you today. Sterling and I actually spoke here last year. Landon, where are you at? I can't really see very well. Maybe he's not back yet. As soon as I walked in today, he walked up to me, reintroduced himself, said he remembered me. Sterling was looking forward to the session today. The community here is so special. How many of you, this is your first, I know you've already had to raise your hand so many times because I've been paying attention, the first event. This summit, I hope you are realizing how special it is. Dave, Kristy, and the team, from access to resources, education, community, not to mention in Sundance. It really is one of a kind, and we feel so lucky to be part of it. So we are from Pelion Venture Partners. Pelion is the oldest and largest early stage venture capital fund in the state of Utah. So we are currently investing out of Fund 7, which is about $400 million, into technology-enabled startups. So you might be wondering, why are venture capitalists here talking to us today about aligning product and revenue? And so we're gonna give just some brief introductions of our backgrounds to provide more context to that.
Hi everyone, my name is Tyler Hogge. Excited to be here today. And for the last 4 years, I led the product organization at a company named Divvy, which funny enough was funded by Pelion. So that's the connection there. Divvy eventually sold to a company named Bill.com, and after 4 or 5 years of leading product, I left and joined Pelion of this year. And a lot of the learnings we're going to go through today came from the experiences I had with the product org and the revenue org at Divvy and Bill.com. So revenue org being the key. Why doesn't Sterling introduce himself?
Yep, so I was, as some of you know from last year, I was running the revenue side of the house at Divvy. We went from $0 in revenue to over $400 million in run rate during the time that I was there. And a big part of that was making just about every mistake I feel like we could make in terms of alignment and how to work with product and how to get our own teams firing on all cylinders. So what Tyler talked about, I'm just the flip side of that coin and excited to share some of the learnings from the screw ups.
And Kristy?
So prior to joining Pelion, I was a founder. So I co-founded a startup. I exited that, have a couple issued patents. After that, I worked at a growth startup where I was managing global product operations and customer advisory. After that, I worked for a company called Instructure under the management of Toma Bravo, managing operations and strategy. And this is where a big curveball came, and I was asked to step up and lead global customer experience, which I didn't have a big background in, but learned very quickly. And overnight started managing a team of 25, across professional services, technical support, account management, customer success, renewals. And then when we were acquired by a private equity firm based out of the UK, they asked me to lead all of their customer experience. So by the time I left and joined Pelion, had a department of about 70 to 100 people, a little under 100 million in revenue, and was managing most of the post-sales operations. And all of us are very passionate and opinionated about the topic we're going to speak to you about today because of those experiences. And also as investors, we are in the foxhole with people who are doing it right now. The people who are managing more with less, as Kristy pointed out earlier, the people like Shane who are trying to manage how to fit everything under revenue and why that might be valuable because customer success has changed and evolved with the world. And so we're really excited to be here today to talk to you about that.
All right, so let's talk about the problem. I think this problem generalizes across all startups, but specifically let's envision that maybe some cool looking product managers in the blue sweaters at the top of the boat are super excited that the problems the company's facing over in customer success aren't their problems. They heard in the company all hands that we have like a churn issue, and man, I'm glad our product's doing well, but at least we don't have to worry about that churn issue. And obviously everyone here knows the total joke that line of thinking is. We're all in the same boat, particularly across product and customer success. And we ran into this quite a bit at Divvy. I remember one of the lowest days of my career was our head of customer success. His name's Jason. He sits me down and he says, Tyler, I don't feel like we're on the same team. I don't feel like your PMs know what's going on. I feel like we're on the front lines alone. And I remember this conversation because of how bad it hurt, because my identity was that I was going to be in the trenches with Jason, but yet he felt like our organization did not feel that way. So the solutions we talk about today are going to come from that conversation with Jason, and I hope they're applicable to each of you.
So customer success has changed. And I think I've been sitting in this morning, we can all agree that customer success drives revenue. These are some stats that I pulled from Bain & Company as well as Gainsight, just validating it. I'm a big data person. Click the button again, Tyler. How many of you have seen Finding Nemo? Tyler, Sterling, I'd like to see your hands raised, please.
I missed it.
So there's this scene in Finding Nemo at the end where all of the fish get captured. And they are just frantic to get out of this net, but the net obviously has them, and so they can't get out. And Nemo has a different perspective. He's on the outside of the net, and he understands that everybody starts swimming in the same direction, swimming down, that they will all be able to overcome this net and escape. And so Nemo swims in to the masses and starts telling everybody, swim down, swim down. It's very inspirational. I love it. All the fish start swimming down, and that net starts going lower and lower and lower until ultimately the net gets released and all of the fish are free. And when you talk about alignment, and even that story Tyler just shared about his executive colleague, change doesn't happen, alignment doesn't happen, growth in revenue doesn't happen at the level it can unless everybody is swimming in the same direction. Next slide. And to do that, we really have to take a different vantage point. Just like Nemo, we have to take a step back and we have to understand all of the facets of all of the problems so that we as leaders can drive our teams in the right direction and help inspire them to align.
All right, so let's get to the punchline. What are the 3 ways we tried out at Divvy and have seen at a few other companies, and you probably have tried some version of these as well, that we use to align product and revenue? The first is a cultural shift. It's a principle. And there's many things that flow from that principle, but it's to make product responsible for not shipping software, because any idiot can ship software. It's to ship software that delights a customer and drives business outcomes. And so if there's a hole in the boat, the product team is failing. In fact, I haven't seen a problem in revenue that if you root cause, it actually isn't really a problem in product. And so if you have any sense that your colleagues in product are pointing at you at the other end of the boat, you have a cultural issue that needs to be addressed at the top. And so my first point is that you've got to make product responsible for outcomes. And we're going to talk about that. The second is an actual tangible deliverable. Create something called a customer-facing roadmap. This changed the dynamic completely between internal teams as well as the QBRs we were holding at Divvy with our customers. And finally, do cross-departmental empathy hours. And I'm going to define all 3 of these things in just a little more depth here in just a second. So a little more on this product outcomes thing. You can think of product management as being on a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, you have this idea of product is a scrum master. They manage the tasks in a Jira backlog. And on the other extreme spectrum, you have this phrase that gets used too much and is not totally true, or actually maybe really true at all, but the phrase is product is the CEO of their product. And so you have these extremes of product.
Tyler, can we do a gut check really quick?
Sure.
How many of you work with product leaders right now where they have the attitude that, like, I am the CEO of product? Just raise your hands. A few of you. How many of you work with product executives or your colleague is just, you guys are actually super tight, empathetic, and it's a great relationship? Awesome. Cool.
So what I'm actually going to advocate for is to be more on this side of product should feel like a CEO of a product, but in some ways it's a terrible metaphor, so let me explain the distinction. It's a great metaphor in the sense that product should feel responsible over actual business objectives like a CEO does. It's a terrible metaphor in the sense that no one actually reports to you in product, and so it doesn't make sense to act as a CEO in that way. That's nuance we won't cover today. But the point is, you actually, a better phrase might be to have product think like a GM, a general manager who's responsible to drive business outcomes while delighting customers along the way. And when you start thinking about that as a product person, You know what that also sounds like? Someone in client success, someone in customer success, someone in revenue, because they both have to delight a customer and hit a business outcome. Product should be no different than that. First, you have to, I'm going to walk you through kind of what I call the pyramid of product excellence. The very base of this pyramid is where most teams end up living, and that's shipping software. You first just have to ship something. You have to get code, working code, into the hands of customers. But hopefully, if you're any good, you can ship something that's high quality. And so the next rung of this pyramid is we've got to ship product that actually meets a quality bar. And that leads to a question that you should ask at your companies, which is, how do we define quality in our product? And at Divvy, we had 5 pillars of quality. Things like speed and performance, and the copy had to be clear, and it actually had to solve a problem, and all of these things were well defined. But if you can ship quality software, that's actually not enough either. The next step is you have to ship something quality fast. And fast is actually determined by your competitors, to be honest, and by the expectations of your customers. And so you have to deliver software before, in fact, quality, a component of quality is speed. Think of a DoorDash example. It could be the highest quality app experience, but if the food arrives 3 hours late, is that a quality product? Of course not. And just like your product, if it's not delivered in a timely manner, if customers are needing solutions that they can't get in a timely manner, it's not quality. So very few software companies make it to this rung, actually. This is kind of rare air already, but I'm going to introduce the last 2 rungs of the pyramid. And the second to last is you have to ship something high quality fast that actually solves a real problem. It actually gets to the core of what the customer needs. Because you can ship something high quality and fast that doesn't solve a problem, obviously that's a failure. Again, this is kind of a component of quality. It actually has to solve the problem. And then the top rung of the pyramid is not only does it have to solve a customer problem, it has to drive a business outcome. So let me give you one final example here to try and drive this point home. If I was a product person at Uber, I could certainly ship something that's high quality, fast, and that was delighted a customer by giving them a very, very long ride for like 10 cents. Of course, people are going to love that, but it doesn't actually allow for a business. And so you're missing the business outcome. And if you don't drive business outcomes, you actually can't serve customers. This is the miracle of capitalism. And so as a product person, you want people to be living at the top of this pyramid and be thinking that it doesn't matter what we ship if it doesn't drive the business outcomes we want. And in fact, Sterling can share more about this, we felt in product, if our revenue org was not hitting their number, not only did we know about it, because Sterling made sure we knew about it, but we felt it because we felt like it was our number. We felt like we owned the number, and we even experimented with our product folks owning the number along with revenue. A quick example there is we had an onboarding product area who's in charge of signing up new customers. Guess how we judged the success of that onboarding squad? Whether we hit our new business target for that month. And the PMs and the engineers knew what that business target was. And so they're no longer just shipping features to help sign up. They're trying to drive outcomes so that we and Sterling's team hit that monthly quota.
At a super high level, you go back to the very first slide we had with the boat. And we should all realize that when we all work at a company, we're all in the same boat, and a problem here is really a problem for all of us. But what you realize is it's so easy to work in a silo and get heads down on whatever it is that you feel like is your primary job responsibility. And what Tyler's highlighted through particularly the first couple principles of alignment is how do you operationally help everybody understand that you're in the same boat? Because from a revenue leadership perspective, you would die to work with a product team that feels like this, that acts like this, because you're in the same boat, and you can constantly be getting better instead of fighting each other. So it certainly had that effect for us when we implemented these things.
One thought on that, just in case it wasn't clear. Shane spoke earlier, and how many of you did you see the slides where he showed the old org for Gong and the new org? One thing all three of us align with Shane on and feel really passionately about because of the success we were able to drive in each of our own companies is that customer success and all customer experience teams are revenue teams. And I know that that's a hot topic that can bring a lot of questions, and we're gonna address some of those hot topics at the end. But when we talk about Tyler's, this top part of this hierarchy of needs and driving outcomes, I think one of the biggest points of friction for me when I've worked in orgs where that alignment with revenue didn't exist, it was really hard to align on business outcomes because segmentation wasn't the same, personas oftentimes were different, and it became really difficult to align because me as a leader thought, like engineering should triage this way, these are the bugs that are important to me based on these things. And so when everybody's aligned under revenue, it makes it much easier to deliver on those outcomes.
Yep, it's a great call out. So for me, as the Chief Revenue Officer of Divvy, it was marketing, sales, implementation, success, support, and then revenue ops. And so when Tyler's talking to Jason, Jason is the representative of customer success on behalf of the revenue org. So when we think about how to actually align this stuff, in every company there's a financial model that dictates the budgeting and the headcount planning and everything else. There are specific numbers in there, right, around like what's our retention going to be? What's our NDR? Are we going to measure churn from a dollar perspective or a logo perspective? There's all these different things that are in there. One of the best, lowest hanging fruit opportunities to align product and revenue is to make sure that those specific metrics are understood and owned across those two teams. So you've got a head of success who has a book of business and a net dollar retention target on a monthly or quarterly basis, right? Well, how do we make sure that on the product side of the house, that number is owned and understood by one of the PMs? Then they can watch what happens when you start to make some of those things very clear and very explicit. So when Tyler sits down to talk about performance with somebody, he's got very specific numbers. And he's talking, hey, we're exceeding, great job, hey, we're not there yet, what are we doing? And we're doing the same thing on our side from a revenue perspective. Well, look at what that naturally forces is you're going to see that PM and that head of success spending a lot of time together, talking about the needs and the challenges and the successes, and you're going to create that alignment just by that alone. You have an added benefit, which is now your financial model. Finance is a lot less apt to be surprised by something bad that happens because you've got more people owning and paying attention and feeling like their performance is very tangible.
So Sterling outlined two benefits of this. I'll add a third one, and it happens to be the second lesson. Oh, actually, Kristy, why don't you talk about this, and then I'll go to the third one. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you got it.
All right, so the other lesson here is if you align at this level, you make the financial model clear, which Sterling said. You spend a lot of time together, which makes people more friendly. And the third is you actually clarify your roadmap. Because now you argue about things on the roadmap in terms of what outcomes they will drive. Because we've aligned at the outcome level. And the roadmap becomes much, much clearer. This was actually one of the root causes of the fight Jason and I were having that day, was he felt like some of the stuff we were shipping were not driving the changes that we needed to drive in order for him to hit his number. But when we align at the outcome level, the roadmap becomes clear. One way we did that explicitly, just talked about it briefly, is we created something called a customer-facing roadmap. And it's dead simple. It was 3 slides. The first slide was called What's New? And where we laid out to our customers and our team everything we've shipped over the last 3 months. Imagine this being presented at a QBR. You're priming that customer to think and say, wow, you guys actually have shipped a lot. And if I want to read more, I can click on all of these, and I've got the release notes on your website. By the way,
ideally, they're seeing things here that they've been asking or feeling the pains of.
That's right.
If you've got a good feedback loop between CSMs and product, this is addressing a lot of the things that they've been talking about previously.
And the best success reps on Sterling's team, what they do is they would actually grab our customer-facing roadmap and they would tailor it for the conversation at the QBR on the Zoom call and say, hey, remember how you asked for mobile receipt upload? Here it is. And they'd make it green and say, let's do a demo of that real quick. And now our roadmap is built for that customer. And it changes the whole dynamic of a customer demanding when something's going to be done to, I know what you got done and why, and now I also know what you're currently working on, which is the second slide, what's now. Couple keys here. If an engineer's working on it, it's on the what's now slide, assuming it's a big enough thing for customers to know about. Another key, what do you see up there that might have surprised you? It's the smaller text in each box. Dates. You ever thought about dates with your product org?
Scary.
Yeah.
Scary.
It's a hell of a fight. And it was a hell of a fight to get this up there. We wanted to get to at least month granularity on the what's now slide. And you better believe engineers and designers and PMs felt the heat once we put this on the customer-facing roadmap, because our CSMs were presenting this to customers dozens of times every day. And we viewed that as a promise to them, a promise which we usually met. When it was on this slide, we met it. I'm not going to say always, but we did a good job here because this customer-facing roadmap solved the alignment problem. The last slide, again, it's very simple. What's next? Now here's the scary part, because you're talking about the literal roadmap, the future-facing thing. So what do you notice about this one? Dates are a little fuzzier. And I even got my legalese asterisk at the bottom. And when this was presented, we would ask the CSMs to clarify, hey, just so you know, this can change. In fact, no one's working on it right now. So you should take stock. You should not take stock in it like you should on the last slide. The last slide, I could point to you the names of the engineers that are working on it right now. So you know it's happening. This next one, this is our best guess. But you know what? We might learn something from the what's now slide, and we might have to change things, and don't murder us if we do.
So the way that we would present this is we would actually tell people one of the reasons why this is still fluid and not locked is because we're still talking to customers. So we would actually present this in a way that helped everybody understand that in a large way our customers were deciding our roadmap, and so if we were wrong here, we were going to admit it and make changes, and they felt like they were, again, more partnering with us to build our product instead of just being dictated to. So it ended up being a huge positive for us both ways.
And that's it, guys. The customer-facing roadmap. What's new, what's now, what's next?
Tyler, we got to go back to that slide now because I have the perfect interjection.
Perfect.
Okay, so you, with these two gentlemen, have insight into some of the brightest minds in leadership in product and revenue. When it comes down to a customer success or customer experience leader actually executing and making crap happen with these people, it is a totally different story, and it can be really difficult to make happen. And so, story time, when I was hired at Instructure, I was originally hired by Thoma Bravo to manage the divestiture and acquisition of Bridge, which was a smaller entity within it. So I was doing a lot of ops, sales enablement, customer success enablement, as well as the carve out. And in that process of acquisition, I discovered that the data that had been reported by customer success was grossly inaccurate around retention numbers. Like, we're talking grossly inaccurate. And imagine being in the middle of an acquisition, meeting with the banker, the buyer, and facilitating these conversations. I was reporting to Thoma Bravo. It was horrible. I was so scared to tell them what I discovered. But truth tellers are rewarded, so I obviously told the truth. And I was about 2 or 3 months in at that point, so it was even scarier being new. And what was said to me was, fix it, which I don't know if that was the best thing to be said. And they made me interim head of global customer experience, and overnight, I kind of mentioned that earlier, inherited those teams. A week into it, I did a gap analysis. I was in way over my head, didn't know what I was doing, and I called the CEO at that time at about 9 o'clock at night crying, telling him that I was not the right person to do this, that I wasn't sure how to do it. They got me a customer, they got me a coach. It was a woman, multi-time CEO, CMO, go-to-market leader who also had been a CCO, unicorn, right? And for the next 6 months, she coached me through leading those teams. And what happened in doing everything that these two just spoke about, we were able to increase gross retention by 10% in over 12 months, just in CX teams alone, and net retention increased by 20%. Then, after we were acquired by Learning Technologies Group, and their whole strategy was growth through acquisition. So at that point, I was overseeing multiple portfolio companies across 5 different countries, and a lot of them were struggling, and so we really just started cranking out turnaround management. And at the end of the day, if you are really struggling and you need to align with product, you need to align with the rest of the revenue teams, these are the 4 things that you should do to tactically make that happen. Tactics drive strategy, and it's a really helpful thing for me to use that when I'm working with my colleagues. The 4 things I did, the first thing, foundationally, I aligned segmentation, personas, and customer journey. You might be shocked to go ask Tyler, a product leader, hey, how are you segmenting customers and thinking about that? I don't know, what would you say?
At one point, I would have a very bad answer, but luckily near the end, we had a better answer.
How about you? Even just revenue, but like specifically sales teams?
Yeah, it's probably easier for us, right? Because we
organize the teams.
We drive demand for a segment. We have a sales team for a segment. We have implementation for a segment. So we had 4 at Divvy, from self-serve all the way up to mid-market.
And then earlier in the presentation, which is how I originally was segmenting, was simply by ACV. So already in the customer's experience, going from point of entry into sales and their entire customer journey, it becomes very mismatched if that customer experience isn't aligned. And so just having those conversations with product, with all of the revenue leadership, it'll force everything to happen that Tyler and Sterling are talking about. Communication, which is what we're going to talk about after this, and empathy hours. The product roadmap sessions, I asked for invitations. I promised to be a fly on the wall, and if I did communicate, it was with data, really backed up qualitative and quantitative data that really helped facilitate intelligent decisions on behalf of product. And then renewal look-ahead plan. I would say this is the thing, if you were to ask employees what I was most strict about, they would have told you the renewal look-ahead plan, but this is how we really became proactive instead of reactive. The CSMs that were on my teams knew at least a year out the renewal status. I think if you wait beyond that, it's too late because people, 6 months before have already made their decisions. And so making sure you have a solid renewal look-ahead plan in place, and then data. You can't manage what you can't measure, and for a CX leader, customer success leader, being responsible for those results, it's critical that you understand and have healthy data. And that can be hard if you don't have the resources for a data analyst, but just figuring that out is so critical. So I think the communication now, which I think is an excellent way to sort of wrap up before we go to the fun part.
Yep, so after the customer-facing roadmap, the third thing we did is fairly simple. We had everyone in our product org have a quota for something we called empathy hours. What's an empathy hour? Take an hour out of your month, 1 hour, and go sit down with someone in support, success, and ideally sales. You're trying to do all 3 of those. So we have PMs answering phones and tickets as customers come in with issues. We have PMs joining success calls or the QBR or the demo. And then we have PMs joining the sales calls with prospects. And this is a way of shifting those guys in the blue sweaters to the same side of the boat as everyone else in the org. And you'd be surprised at how often a PM would come back from an empathy hour and say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that this one little issue was causing 70 million tickets, and I can get this engineer to fix it.
It's an exact number, by the way.
Yeah, 70 million. I can get an engineer to fix it this weekend and we're good. And these support reps would literally cry. They would be so happy that we finally understood the pain that they go through that we didn't see at the end of the boat with our eyes closed. Empathy hours are a very simple way to fix a lot of problems of alignment and execution across both organizations. And I would hold your teams to a specific quota and have them go sit with the rest of the revenue, success, and support orgs. A bunch of other ideas that we won't go through here, some other tactics that Kristy and I and Sterling have all used. We can share these slides after. We're not going to read through all of these, but things like hackathons, and we had roadmap reviews and product reviews. And
I'm actually curious, have any of the customer success, I can't say that word today, customer success folks here participated in hackathons with product or engineering by raise of hands? That if you are not doing that, that is such a cool thing. You should bring that back and ask your product or engineering leader to do that with you. Really
I'll say
cool.
10 or 15 seconds on the top bullet point. We implemented something called a lunch and learn, which was every 2 weeks, product managers would join a lunch with all of success and revenue who wanted to show up and would talk about the things that were about to ship from the what's now. And then would also talk about why they've selected the things on the what's new. Product marketing loved this meeting because it was also, and sales enablement, because it was a way to train everyone on what was coming through the pipeline, where they could get resources, and what customers needed this. This was the kind of release little luncheon where we could align together once more. All right, this is the summary. So the problem is a lack of alignment, a lack of execution. The solution, we gave you 3 and hopefully some more ideas. And the end result is let's now be not just in the same boat, but rowing in the same direction, or in the case of Nemo, pushing that net farther down.
Thanks.
I think that's all we have for the first section.
Yeah, we have, I don't know if it was shared, but we have a surprise for you all. Where's Kristy at? I am Kristy. There are 2 Kristys that are going to be on stage today. Get on here.
Mike's
So we
might not
have
be
a
on.
special segment. I think one thing that is a hot topic, and Shane hit on this earlier, is customer success and revenue and how that works together. There's so many questions that it creates. Some hot topics. And so for today, we decided to do questions with the Kristys. If you follow these 2 gentlemen on LinkedIn or Twitter, they have no problem playing devil's
And if
advocate.
you don't, you're dead to us.
So they're going to ask Kristy and I some questions,
we sit down?
ask us the hot topics.
Okay, Christie's, you're on this side.
Okay. And we haven't seen the questions,
We
so
have
I
not
have
seen
no
the
idea.
questions. We don't know what they're going to
This is
ask.
blind.
We should
right?
also probably take
so
questions from the
uncomfortable.
crowd too.
Okay.
So yeah, Tyler and I will get this started. But as we go, if anybody has anything they want to dive deeper on or understand better, we can facilitate some from the audience. So the first question that I have is around being asked to do more with less. Okay, it's not unique, but I think it's hitting success teams particularly hard. So what are the actual ways people are going to be able to do more with less in customer success?
I guess someone wasn't here for my keynote presentation, but
No, we were. We want you to repeat it.
okay. Oh, good. I only need 25 minutes, so we're gonna be great. No, seriously. So my take on this is, first, my advice is we need to stop using that phrase. I think it's really off-putting. I think it really, I've asked my teams, how does that make them feel when they hear that? They're the ones absorbing all of the work, so the do more is just falling on whoever is left. So that's the big issue. Now, in terms of ways to optimize this, the things that I've said is you've got to redesign your processes. What worked when you had an army of folks isn't going to work when you have less resources, whether that be people, money, technology. So you've got to rethink it. It's not about doing more or doing the same things with less people and expecting the same outcomes. You really have to rethink, how are we going to optimize and drive the most value for your customers? The second thing I said is optimizing technology. A lot of technology that is procured by customer success organizations goes widely underutilized. We are not using things effectively. We're not optimizing them. We've got a lot of wasted functionality that's sitting out there in the ethos. So you've got to think differently about how do we use that and optimize it for our teams and for our people. And then the last thing I'd say is you got to optimize your people. Not everyone is sitting in the seats that you need them to be in. You don't need 10 CSMs. If you're redesigning your processes, do we need to have specialty roles? Can we elevate folks to do different things? So I just think thinking creatively about what you do with who's left.
Totally agree with that. What do you think success org should be saying no to? Because I think when you're trying to, whatever, how would you say it? If it's not doing more with less, how are we saying it?
We have to do something different with what we have.
We have to do something different.
Can I provide just one high-level context for this conversation, which maybe some of you may not like it, so I'm warning you now. I was a bootstrapped founder. Anybody know what bootstrapped means? Have you heard that phrase before? A few of you. So bootstrap means that you don't raise any money, venture, or debt, and you basically just make do with what you have to build your startup. The whole goal is to make it profitable from the beginning. And one of my observations in customer success is that we have been used to bloated organizations where like that has been the norm. We were in a bull market, like that was the expectation. And I think that people didn't necessarily learn how to do what everything Kristy's speaking to, which is operate a lean company. And like regardless of, you know, what time we're in, there should always be discipline in how we operate. And what is happening now with the layoffs and cuts, it's extremely unfortunate because, you know, coming from such a bloated organization, maybe things were managed in a way that made it difficult, but it's actually really healthy. It's a healthy way to operate. And one of my hopes as we move forward is that we'll continue to operate this way because it's really good.
Yeah, I mean, that was the whole premise of this, is like, you have to design sustainable success.
Yeah.
We oftentimes, I mean, even as I think about the CS orgs that I've built over the years, throwing bodies at things always felt like what you did. It's like, oh, great, we have 30 new customers coming in, 30 new customers requires 1 new CSM, there we go. At no point did I ever stop to think, okay, are we at a place where I need to rethink what's happening here, restructure, rebuild, redesign? No, it became this thing where it's the numbers and the mathematical formula I had designed just made sense, and I never went back to the well to go say, should we continue to build like this?
Yeah. So this is a question of prioritization, right? And when you have to narrow your focus and do something different because the money and the technology is different, what are some things that success teams should at least consider saying no to or deprioritizing?
I'm going to say EBRs and QBRs.
Okay.
All right, that's just like a tactical thing.
Okay.
I'm just going to keep throwing that out there until somebody says you're right. But it's the types of things that don't drive value for our customers inherently, right? We do the things because they're the motions that we believe
Well, what are
drive
those
value.
things?
Yeah, so an EBR and QBR is a great example of
I think it totally
one.
depends though. And I think it totally depends on what the business objectives are, and that's what y'all were talking about earlier. So
What do you think they should be? So what is the top of the pyramid
well, you're
if you're
trying
a
to
success
force an
team?
answer here, Sterling. I see what you're doing. I think that the EBRs and QBRs are a good one. I also think that weekly meetings with customers, unless it's, you know, a really white glove partner, you know, enterprise level, but you'd be surprised how many, you know, SMB, when you talk about segmentation and why that's so important, weekly one-on-one meetings, I don't think personally are necessary at that level. I think people can get really creative with, you know, group meetings where there's webinars, where tons of customers are invited, even the white glove customers. I think that there's low touch, tech touch, you know, ways of operating that really cut out a lot of the day-to-day minutia. And also the advancement of technology and what is happening there, I think is really exciting in helping people be more efficient.
What about internally? What are some ways you could get rid of some of the fluff around internal, things that are time sucks internally?
All internal meetings.
Okay, all right, that was it. Just all the meetings.
Thank you for the softball. Though.
I'm gonna flip this though. What was it from both of your perspectives when you were working with customer success leaders? What were the things that you didn't think were valuable that you thought should get cut?
So the top of the pyramid for us was revenue, right? And even from a success perspective, everybody had a dollar amount quota on a monthly basis, depending on their book of business and the products that they were working. And so really it was all this revenue driving activity, right? That was sort of our pinnacle. And so if a QBR didn't help with that, it's like, well, it's kind of a waste. If an internal meeting didn't help with that. And so we had a North Star that I think we were able to orient around, and it aligned our product team, our customers, and us, because they're not paying you or using your product if it's not helping them. Product doesn't care about it if the customer doesn't care about it, and we don't care about it if it's not driving a business outcome. So that's how we did it, and but we weren't great at it. We were of the bloated mentality for sure.
What were some of the things that didn't drive revenue that you ended up shedding? Can you think of examples?
Oh my gosh. So here's the thing. You talked about like a capacity model that you had, which is, hey, we had 15 customers and that equals 1 CSM, and we did that for years. And if I were to go back, I think if I would have figured out how to implement customers more successfully, so invest more in the first 30, 60 days, I could have maybe doubled or tripled the capacity model for like the long-term CSMs. That's like a painful learning for me, because I'm almost certain it was an absolute no-brainer that I'm just too stupid to see. That's one.
Makes sense.
if we could get the right integrations and the right things out of the gate, they really didn't need as much hand-holding as maybe I thought they did.
So I've got one question for the Kristys, and then maybe we should see if the audience have any. Sterling brought up something that I witnessed at Divvy firsthand, which was he had a quota for literally everybody. If there was a janitor that was cleaning our office, he was giving them a quota and was ready to put them on a PIP too. And I think it's probably more controversial about quotas in client success and customer success and in support. Have we talked much about that? What do the Kristys think about having quotas for every CSM in the org?
I believe in revenue targets. I do not believe in quotas.
What's the difference?
Okay, so the quota is required. It's something that they're going to have to hit to earn any of their potential OTE. The targets are something that we're building towards. And so maybe the comp model is going to suggest that if they don't hit that, it's designed so that we're reaching towards something, we're building towards it. What I have found is that giving them a quota drove unhealthy behavior in how they engaged with customers. They were doing unnatural things to get money from customers. When they had a target, their behavior still anchored heavily on value while still reaching to grow revenue.
Okay, we got exactly what I wanted, which is a way. Oh, go ahead, Kristy.
Wait.
Go get him, girl.
Both the Kristys have to weigh in.
Yep.
I would agree with what Kristy said, and I have worked with organizations that were quoted that were failing miserably. I've worked with organizations that were quoted and they were crushing it. I've worked with organizations that have not been quoted and have been crushing it, and I've worked with organizations that have not been quoted and they're failing. I think that the key here is that people are aligned and accountable to revenue goals. And whether that is through a quota, whether that is through a bonus that is tied to EBITDA, whether that is, I think that there are many ways that you can incentivize people, but I think the biggest thing is understanding and comprehending the revenue goals and that the teams are aligned to that. Because quotas only work if the teams comprehend like the goals and have the tactics to deliver on that.
Makes sense.
I think there's a little bit of though, like, the what you're selling, who you're selling to, all of those things play into a part of this as well,
who owns
right?
the
Like,
relationship, who owns the account.
All the variables about even the product. Like, for example, we sell as a per license model. So if teams aren't growing, I can't sell them more product. I can't sell more licenses to people that don't exist. I can't give my team a quota and say you're mandated to go hit this because you have to sell more licenses. To who? So I think that there's a lot of variables that need to be considered when designing this to figure out what is the appropriate way to structure this.
Makes sense. Sterling, any responses?
Yeah, so I basically disagree with all that.
Yes.
Okay, so here we go. To me, and you can, this is your conference. You can ask me to leave.
You're right, I can.
What I would say is the difference between a target and a quota is simply how much accountability you're putting on that person. The argument is that I guess you're asking a more fundamental question of the primary focus of a success team. What is it? Why does it exist? Okay? And you're saying primary is value for the customer. Secondary would be value to the business. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that's necessarily what I'm saying.
Okay.
I think that, like, yes, that's what I'm saying, but I think that when you're creating value to the customer that's directly aligned to the business objectives, it without a doubt.
It's just one A and one B.
It's like
Absolutely.
you can't have one without
Absolutely.
the other.
Yeah, and I think that is how the majority of folks would feel. And I think that if you flip the paradigm, you can have the benefits of quotas and of teams that drive revenue, and you have to watch out for those downsides. But if you use that same argument, it's like, well, why do we have quota in sales? It's like, well, sales, what's their purpose? Well, are they driving value for the customer or value for the business? What's 1A and 1B? They have to do both. I think it's a false dichotomy to say we can't figure out how to sell more into our existing customer base, so we're going to have a quota, or be valuable to our customers and not do unnatural or unhealthy things. I think that's a false dichotomy.
You don't think that sales is selling the possibility of value?
I think a great sales org is
value?
actually adding value. They're helping customers think through a problem more clearly. They're helping customers evaluate options. So yeah, ideally, a sales org is actually adding value, not just selling future value.
Ideally.
Yep,
Okay.
ideally. So there is nuance here, because Sterling pointed out that we had something very special at Divvy, which was a North Star metric called spend on our credit cards, or revenue, basically. And it turns out that that happens to be a great usage or metric for customer health as well, because it's what they're using. And so maybe an underlying premise here is that Divvy had, that others would need to apply, is what was best for the customer and what was best for the business was literally the same thing. And you brought up an example, Kristy, where if that company's not growing, they don't need more licenses. So what's best for them is not to add more licenses. So I'm curious, Sterling, in that world where adding more licenses, adding more seats is actually not what they need,
Yeah.
well, how would you solve for that?
So this is the thing is, I don't think in success you can do this customer by customer. I think you have to do this by a relatively large book, because the needs of people are changing. Some people are growing, you need to be there to take advantage of the new licenses. Some people have a very different problem. They're trying to cut costs, and you need to be there to service those needs and add value. So I think that there's ways to do it where, like you said, you cannot sell seats to people who don't exist. But somewhere in that book, there are people who are growing and who could have more value by getting more usage out of whatever your product is. And so if you set up the system to
Across
be
a book.
across a book,
And I would call that
they'll-
segmentation. If
Yep.
you set up the segmentation in a way that is successfully done, those
Yeah.
customers, like what we had them and like they went into maintenance mode once
Right.
they reached that point where they were on a different customer journey than others.
That's right. And so it's nuanced. Like, trust me, this is not like some black and white answer. But I think what our job is, especially in the current environment, is how do you figure out how to do both? How do we actually figure out how to have all the upsides of both of these systems?
All right, in the last 5 minutes or so, is there anyone that would like to ask questions of the Kristys, or we'll leave it and open up to us?
I see a few hands. Yeah, just
Unless you have mean things to say, then
Tyler, do you want to manage calling on people?
Yeah, I can't see a thing. Is the only
we've got one
problem.
over here. Yep.
So thanks for this. I want to respond to all of it, Robert. What I do want to say is I spent a lot of time over the past few months working with some consultants on looking at our future service package design. We're thinking about all these things. I own post-sales, so implementation, consulting, hacking, as well as CS. So it's all kind of lumped together, looking at that. One concept that they shared with me that I think is used for all of us is the notion of shadow services. The definition of that is, what are the things that you're doing today that are not contractually obligated? What you're doing today is not contractually obligated. Then ask the question, why is that work being done?
Did you call that shadow services?
Shadow services. You get your regular service, you got to shadow something that's happening even though they don't have to. But then, does it need, is it adding value? If so, if it went away, what would happen? The downside of not doing it. And then, who else could do it? Could the customer do it? Could you put it to a partner? Could you put it back into the organization? So it's been a very interesting exercise to go through my leadership team and saying, everyone's saying, there's more to do, we're busy, we've got all these things, I can't do X, Y, and Z. Well, what are you spending your time on? When you go through it, you find lots and lots and lots of things. The big one for me, one of those on-site meetings. I'm not obligated by contract to send a CSM or a technical consultant to any customer ever. And I do it all the time. Why? Should I? Do I need to? Does it matter? But it's a thought for you to go back and reflect on, even things you do all the time in your job. But that may be the one maybe hits all four of you. One of the shadow servers we spend a lot of time on is I call it the middle section, the handler in the middle. So people where in the middle. When the software is not doing something it's supposed to be doing, and the customer is suffering, my team often picks in the middle and glues it together. We run an extract, we do a report, we do something in the middle, we do some jiggling to make it all work, right? We push on the product team to try to get there. Two things happen with that. One is, we are brokering the conversation with the customer. We become almost pseudo project managers in the middle between our customer and the product. One question is, how do we get product to step in and take that role? Because the other concern is if we don't do it, and the customer churns, how's that all going to play out, right? So we see that kind of accountability to be there. I guess let's leave it at that.
I would say let it break. I know that may be controversial, but typically, like, people want things to work out. And I have let stuff get to the point of breaking, and every week when I'd show up to an executive meeting, I would say, gosh, like, this is so hard. Like, Tyler, like, can somebody from your team step in, or, you know, Mark, who was our head of sales in EMEA, and NORAM, like, really need your help on this, like, it's gonna break, like, do we need to get some contractors, do we need to get Bears Dev involved, do we need to, you guys tell me, because we are at capacity right now, and I would let stuff break. That actually is what I did most often, but I think that the response, people never actually let it break. The response was always that everybody else showed up to help, but I was very intentional with what I let break.
Doug? Good to see you guys. Good to see you too.
All right, love the presentation. Thank you. And thanks for being here. So question, we've talked a lot about revenue and goals versus targets versus quotas on the revenue side, specifically for CSMs in this room. Can we talk a little bit about product? So we started this with, we need to have alignment on outcomes with product. Can you, Tyler, talk a little bit about what would a product rep or product person's comp design look like in an ideal world?
Yep, real quickly is the way we organized our product and engineering org is probably similar to many of you, which is we created squads. The squad had a PM, a designer, and an engineer, and anywhere between 4 and 6 engineers to fill out that squad. Every squad owned a part of our product, which we called an area, and the sum total of those areas was mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive across the whole product. What that means is that every square inch of the product was owned by someone, and no one double owned something. So there was clear ownership lines. Think of a cul-de-sac where every lot is clear boundaries on that lot, and I'm the owner of the whole cul-de-sac, and I've divvied it up across different lot owners. Now, all that to say that every single squad, AKA area, had their own outcome specific to that squad. And oftentimes that outcome was revenue or retention, but there's other times where, for example, we had a squad at Divvy that was in charge of underwriting new customers and giving them a credit line. It was a risk squad. And so their outcome was they had to have loss rates on a credit card lower than our quota. It was essentially quota. But you know what's interesting about quotas is it's really easy to optimize one thing, because if you want low loss rates, all you do is decline everybody. But we also have to hit our growth goals. So they had a second outcome. We had a primary and a secondary outcome. And the principle, Doug, is every squad had an outcome, many of which were revenue explicitly or revenue related, but not all of them. Some of them were risk related. I'm trying to think of others, like maybe it was conversion on related usage because there was no revenue. But every squad had an outcome that we made clear at the squad level, and every engineer knew about that.
So CSMs, we can lose our jobs. Sales reps, we can lose our jobs when we don't meet our outcomes. Do you do that in product?
Not as often as we should have, probably. The interesting thing is, once it's owned by the whole team, you have engineers who start to care about this too, which is a great thing. But if you miss that outcome, it's actually the whole team. And really, I would say it's the PM's fault. But this is where it starts to get tricky. I think if you're not hitting outcomes for an extended period of time, it's time to make a change. Because if you do that at the aggregate level, the company doesn't hit the outcomes. Any other questions in the last couple minutes? We may have time for one or two more. And if you're raising your hand, grab this guy because I can't see you.
I think there's 2 people. So this guy right here I see a blue collared, oh, it's Jaron. What's up, man?
Oh, hi guys, it's me instead. So my question is very specific to, like, how are you tracking customer feedback? So you spoke about sharing the roadmap and customizing it to the customers you're talking to, but how is this information tracked? How is this information shared? We are having that issue now where it's like, where does this information live?
I can share thoughts, but anyone else?
I'm sure we all have different experiences of how we've shared it. Yeah. Go for it, and then we can all pitch
Couple
in.
quick ideas. If you have a ticketing system like Intercom, have your agents tag certain tickets and then set up an automatic email to every PM who owns that area. So I talked about areas as like onboarding, boom. PM should be reading all those tickets. Another way is those lunch and learns we talked about, where support reps and CSMs show up to the lunch and learn, and they'll present the data from what they've done over the last couple weeks of, guys, this one was 90% of our problems. What are we doing about it? Again, it's back to communication and setting mechanisms between the two orgs to share that data back and forth. And that's 2 ideas of how we did it. Anyone else have other ideas?
We use our community for that. So we've used Canny, I've used AHA in the past. We're now using Vanilla as our community platform, which has an area that we can capture that. So customers that have that feedback, we ask that they put it in there so we have a central repository for that. I'm yelling, I'm trying my best. Okay. So we have try to maintain a central repository for all that feedback, as well as using our platform, Client Success. So as CSMs or other folks who are engaging directly with customers are capturing that feedback, being able to tag it, so then we'll be able to pull reports and be able to categorize it and feed it in. And the last thing is we have regular recurring meetings with our product team. I like to think that even though our team is lean, we do work very collaboratively directly with product and help facilitate even conversations directly with our clients and the product team to make sure that not only are we understanding what their needs are, but that we really have a good understanding of what they're looking for us to design.
I would also say put responsibility on product for this. If you and your teams are unsure where product roadmap, planning, strategy, where any of that lives, ask. And then if there's something that doesn't exist, which is very likely, just ask again. Ask for them to create something so that you all can track. The best product org and leader that I worked with, his name is Chris Kaufman, and he ended up building for all of the CX teams, and the sales teams used it as well, an internal dashboard that tracked all progress on everything that they were actioning in that sprint. And then he also ended up creating an external customer roadmap version of that. It took a lot of effort to get it up and running, but once they had it, it was pretty simple to scale it, to share the information. But even the lunch and learns, like inviting somebody from product to come talk to your teams if you're unsure, I think so much just comes down to communication, honestly.
One last question, or we'll end the break. Looks like we've got one here.
Thank you. So my company utilizes Product Board for insights, but we have over 8,000 insights in Product Board. So a job that I've taken on is to help the customer success and sales teams prioritize for product alongside product support or leaders. Do you have any tips on how I can help my team prioritize what are the most important insights?
So to me, this comes back to the question that should be super easy, but actually ends up being really hard is what's the company North Star? What is the actual thing that above all else is driving the business forward and the mission forward? And then you start to prioritize as a function of that. What impacts that North Star the most out of these 8,000 things that we're dealing with?
Yeah, your question generalizes to what is the most important thing to work on? And what is the most important thing to work on is a function of the key strategic goals and the top line North Star metrics that you use to count those goals. So usually when I run into this problem, it's because there's a lack of clarity at some of this other stuff. What are we actually trying to achieve this year? What are our 3 biggest goals? What's our North Star metric? And go back to that, and roadmap flows from that clearer. Now I know that sounds super trite and the details are really tricky, but I would start there.
You can just get absolutely lost in this stuff, right? Is it NPS? Is it CSAT? Is it revenue? Is it like? And we all have 24 acronyms floating around in our head that we kind of loosely own. But until you can actually, at a company level, articulate the one that matters the most, prioritization becomes really hard. And if it's hard for you as a leader, imagine how hard it is for the individuals on your team. They're just lost.
I would say as a success leader, something you could drive if you don't have that clarity that they're speaking to for the North Star is aligning cross-departmentally on segmentations, your ICP. I think that understanding those 2 things will really help speak to what the North Star should be. Yeah. Kristy, do you have anything to add?
I wish I had something to add to what has already been said.
+1.
Okay.
+1. Well, thank you to the Kristys and thank you to all for listening to us. We appreciate it and hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah.